thanks for that wonderful intro. I'm Lenz, as you've already heard. I've got only a few questions. I'm not the important person here. The important people are Jose, Benjamin, and Pedro. Can we please get the three of you up on stage and we'll do a round of introductions around who you are, where you're from, why you're here, all these good things. So please, massive round of applause for our panel. We're slightly messing with your brain because the pictures don't match up.
I was thinking mais fácil.
All right.
Sorry.
Everybody has a mic.
Yeah, everyone does.
You're on the mic first.
So we're talking about innovation ecosystems. Who in here is an ecosystem builder or a community builder? Just to get a gauge for. Got a few? Awesome. So before we kick off with discussing how to build innovation ecosystems, I wanted to sort of get a quick gauge on where everyone's from, which ecosystems have you been participating in, which ecosystems do you live in, what is sort of the background that you bring to the discussion? Can we just, or we start at the far end and then we move across. Pedro, do you want to kick us off?
Do you hear me? Yeah. Okay, good morning, everybody. So, my name is Pedro Rocha. I'm actually Brazilian. So, I come from Rio de Janeiro ecosystem. And coming from there, I started to evaluate a lot of different hubs and different movements. And I realized that actually okay, it's better, yeah. I realized that actually the collaborative economy, the sharing economy was a very important way of understanding how to develop the whole ecosystem, to change the idea that, from scarcity to abundance. And that is something that when I moved to Lisbon 4 years ago, I immediately connected to the 351 Startups Association and started to try to bring that idea, that perspective to Portugal about how can we connect so many amazing players that are out there, but that don't communicate between them. So my perspective is really about how can we share best practices, how can we share resources, and really grow as an ecosystem instead of only individual hubs.
Thank you, Pedro. Hi, guys. Good morning. Oh, yeah, still morning, just about. So I'm Ben. I'm from the UK originally, as you can tell by my defined accent. So yeah, I've been part of the UK ecosystem, Portugal ecosystem, a few other ecosystems over the last sort of 20 years. And yeah, I also head up like a community called ICE here in Portugal, which is a community for founders and investors focused on tech. And that started in 2009 in the UK. More recently in Portugal, I started an incubator here. So we launched 22 impact-focused businesses in 18 months. So I really got to understand the Portuguese ecosystem as well. E também falo português.
My name is
Microphone's not up.
Hello? Yeah. Now you know. Okay, so I'm José. I'm actually new in the ecosystem, meaning that I'm a social scientist. My background is actually in history and political science, and I transitioned recently to the areas that we'll be talking about today, tech, innovation, and so forth. I'm actually drafting now a project that it's mapping one of probably the most innovative ecosystems these days, which is around Web3. Right? Web3 is in between the forefront of innovation. It touches a lot of probably, one of the conversations we're having in whatever, IoT, like AI, even quantum, like it's between the forefront, like of a lot of what we are designing in the present future of our, like livelihood. And we realized that the ecosystem was not mapped, was not organized in itself. So the Quo Vadis project is a project that we have built up exactly to map, to organize this ecosystem itself. We are partners here with the Algarve, like Tech Hub, with the Algarve, like Evolution, and also with the 351, for instance, we're also partners with them. About ICE, I think we're going to speak, like later on, exactly with the purpose of, like connecting the dots, like to discover, like to know better each other, and then through a survey that we're going to submit and to present during the Web Summit, introduce the output of the report, and then build up, like into an incoming years.
Awesome. So we've got different takes on what innovation ecosystems look like and where you're coming from. So coming from sharing economy, coming from Brazil background into Portugal, coming from a UK background into Portugal, coming from a Portuguese background with Web3. This all sort of gives a pretty round picture of, I think, where we are at the moment. So could you please like go into it, and doesn't have to be like one after the other, of things that you think really, really worked well in the ecosystems that you've been part of, or that you think that you're currently part of? So something that really you think like this is the thing that happened that made this ecosystem work.
You started an ecosystem.
I'll start. Yeah, I started an ecosystem. Yeah. So I've actually also got a. I think being able to connect locals with international people is something that I'm really passionate about, and so I've got a community. Actually, we should probably talk in Lisbon called Portugal Intersect, which connects like local and foreign people, I guess, focused on investing and founding companies or founders. So I think people, basically, I think being able to attract the right personnel, being able to attract the types of people that can help each other grow and help each other's opportunities. I think that for me is the biggest thing that will continue fostering ecosystems to grow. Here in Portugal, there's many different types of like tax incentives that work obviously for both businesses and people, investors, and I think those sorts of programs, like in the UK, there's the same sort of thing for investing in startups. These sorts of things have worked for fostering a better ecosystem over time. But yeah, I think basically people. I think Portugal's got that for sure. It's got the ability to attract the right people.
We go a bit beyond, like because, for instance, I take.
It works. Just don't worry.
Let me.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me go a bit beyond, like what you were just saying. Because, for instance, we took this project and we tried to go a little beyond, because I see that a lot of institutional, or let's just say ecosystem design is extremely focused in this, like duality between the founders, like in the projects, and the VCs or the investors, right? And the way that we designed, for instance, our project is exactly to go more than just that. Like we just realized that, like, and actually it's by now, like the end of the year, we're going to see the reports, like everybody's going to put up their report, all the different ecosystem is going to put up the report, and you're going to see a bunch of accumulated symbols, which are the startups that are within the ecosystem. But you never see what's behind these startups. You never see the other part of, like the whole, like ecosystem building, which is invisible. So for instance, in our project, which is based on a survey, the survey in itself has three parts, naturally. It's a prosopographic, which is, like the study of the society in itself, the community. Then you have, like the verticals that you're on Web3, which is, of course, like a wide range, like of verticals. But essentially, we try to open up and widen up, like how are you on Web3? The professionals behind. Because I give you an example. People that are organizing this event are invisible in the ecosystem, right? The Miguels, like the people that are, like promoting this event are invisible in the ecosystem. A lot of the builders of that are, like behind the startups that we are then promoting in the ecosystem are invisible in the ecosystem, right? The community managers, like the salespersons, like the designers, like the copy, the marketers, they are all invisible in the ecosystem. Why? Because you have a focus essentially, like on this, financialization in the promotion of, like the startup, like in the VC angle, and then the promotion of this. This is not to say that this is wrong. I'm just saying that it's, in my point of view, we have established this, we should go beyond that.
I like being invisible.
Pedro.
No, that is interesting. I'm going to try to speak louder, so let's see if it works now. Talking about how to have a healthy ecosystem. It's interesting that when I first came to Portugal in 2017, I saw that there were many actions that the government they were doing a lot of very interesting things that now I see that they are what the government can do. And people usually complain about the government. The government is not doing enough. But actually, we do have a lot of initiatives from many different layers of the institutions, the government. And what I believe that Portugal now is getting more mature is about the people. Because we need to actually stand up and do our things as well. And that is what having everybody speaking in English, have everybody being open to actually share with others, to exchange ideas, to really have a lot of meetups all the time. It's really what we need so that an ecosystem can be healthy. Because we need the government, but yes, we need the people. We need the society to actually go and push and create the things and use the grants. Because we have and the grants needs to arrive as well. But we need people to use the grants, and that is something that at 351, I like to say that our main value is really about connecting the different players, because we have a lot of amazing hubs, amazing professionals all over the country that don't talk to each other. I was talking yesterday night that with Antonio that he was telling that it's easier for them in a way to make a partnership with Norway than with the north of Portugal, because it's easier to get that kind of connection. So I think that is something that we are now getting really better at as an ecosystem. We are having a lot of initiatives about mapping ecosystem, like José just said. We need to know who is here. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the three of us. So that kind of thing is really important. And I believe that Portugal is doing a ecosystem, is really growing better and better about that. And it's something that is very unique. We see people coming from all over the world praising Portugal for, here I find a lot of people really wanting to build, really wanting to do something different and open to share. So I think that Portugal is really, we are in a very special moment and place here.
Awesome point. And I think it's an interesting point to lead into sort of the next round, where we talk a little bit about more the things that we should be doing. Like, there are a lot of things that we are good at, but what are the things we're still missing? What's the bit that kind of makes it grow to the next stage? We heard about people, we heard about ecosystem building. Well, what are the concrete next steps? Do you have any ideas? Want to get started, Ben?
Sure, yeah. So I think it comes down to grit and hustle. So there are definitely great Portuguese founders who are both based here and based abroad who do have this grit and hustle. I saw a big lack of it when we were running the incubator. And I think finding the right people, connecting the dots is all about grit and hustle. Like, there's many people that say, it's better to go and raise money in the UK or in the US or wherever. But that's not really true. I mean, you're attracting the most amazing, wealthy people that want to be involved in interesting businesses here. Plus, there are lots of different funds and stuff. Fine, there are way more funds elsewhere, but there are way more people after those funds. So if you want to hustle and you've got an amazing concept, idea, business, then I truly believe and have proven that here is the most amazing place to build that business. So I think the hustle for sure. Just look harder.
Do you want to add to this?
I want to add. I mean, first I want to get this about being visible or invisible. I mean, of course, it's up to you. I mean, and again, I mean, when we are pitching our project, we always present what we are doing with the basis on trust and in freedom. So of course, if you are building, it's up to you to be disclaiming what you're building or not. It's your own personal choice or your corporate choice if you want to be visible in the ecosystem or not. You can have a go-to-market strategy that you want to be stealth now, and then later on, And I think you should respect that, either at the individual level and the corporate level. And I think this is decisive also if you want to, again, be respectful for the ecosystems that you are trying to tap in. I think it's what you are saying, it's relevant, again, from in the individual, in the corporate level. I think we should, again, know better each other. like to your point, like Pedro, and I know that 351, you've been doing a lot of roadshows, you've been doing a lot of events. I've witnessed this. I'm actually here because I've done this, meaning that, like through the project that we are running, like we did a Web3 tour in Portugal. One of the stages we did was actually to come here because this was an untapped, like Web3 community. Nobody in Lisbon or in the country knew about that. So I came here, and then it was, quite interesting to see that after I came, there was a lot of new connectivities that were coming up. So people from Lisbon or from elsewhere, like started to communicate, like started to integrate it. So like all these connectivities that we're talking about, like started to be more salient. So this helps, but this is not enough. In this I agree. I think we need to have more consistency in some of the programs that we're trying to run. I think we are in a very good moment, like in the Portuguese history, that we manage, for different reasons, to attract talent, capital, and opportunities into the country. And it was to us as well to be able to do our own homework, as I used to say. Meaning to work within the different industries and the different verticals that we are in, to know that we are doing good product. Because without good startups, without good product, without good services that we're putting out there, there's no ecosystem that will thrive. So this, and especially, in Web3, there's a lot of, like, let's say a product that it's, especially in this cycle with the meme coins, in my point of view, that's not for probably the best, like use cases. But in other sectors, I was just now, well, in the 20 minutes I've been around, I've already listened to 2-3 very interesting projects. So this is the thing that we should be looking at. Again, like try to capacitate them in the ability that we can, either by bringing into incubators, either bringing into accelerators, introducing to VCs, like in bringing the capacity in different ways. And then hopefully be independent from the political point of view. And I think this is something very new for the Portuguese in the room, because this new generation of builders are independent from the old generation of builders were extremely dependent from the politicking in Portugal, meaning the connection or the deal or the business or the client that they have with the city hall or with the government. The new generation is not that. The new generations, their clients are out there from the start. So you're international from the start. Most of the clients that we're talking here from the companies that we are building, their clients are unrelated with the Portuguese, let's say, it's small ecosystem. And this is a huge factor that people are not really taking attention in. And then, as Pedro was saying, try to make good use of the let's say, the opportunities that we have at the institutional level. Because although there is a lot of abuse and a lot of, let's say it, bad management on those, there are a lot of good use cases that we can also, take good profit as. And I think some of the people here in the room, I also work with test beds, like with the PRR and whatnot. Some, like you guys, will actually see some of the symbols here as well. So this is good examples of good usage. So,
cool. I would like to drill into that international picture a little bit more, because the Portugal doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think most of us have heard or read parts of the Draghi report that was out recently, where Draghi talks about like the innovation landscape that the EU is sitting in, or probably not sitting in anymore. I was part of a discussion a few days ago in Kiev where the EU was pitching to startups in Ukraine to look at the EU as a target market, and the narrator, or the person in my chair asked the general audience, so who is interested in expanding into the EU, and from about 50 people in the room, 3 put up their hand, and the rest was like, why would we? There are bigger markets to fry. So I would like to sort of see if you see a role for the EU and what the EU is currently having as a position within the global market and a global innovation ecosystem, and maybe from there go into what do we need to do in order to actually kickstart all of that again, or don't lose the connection to the world.
Trying to be really cautious about the topic, but I believe that it's very important. We had a brief conversation about that before, that it's really important to think about what are we actually looking for? What are we going after? Because the current landscape in innovation in the world, Europe is, in a way, already lost that wagon. So we need to try to understand what is coming next to be well prepared for that. So how can we now do something that in 5 to 10 years will make us something really more relevant. And I believe that all the improvements that we had with regulations that are really important. And when we talk about the AI Act and many other regulations in Europe, they are striving to protect the people. So yes, it's not wrong to avoid, to try to avoid speculative movements like we had into the artificial intelligence market now that didn't really bring concrete value for now, but was very hyped. I work with AI, so just to say that I'm not against, but I believe that it's really something that what is happening in other places is not necessarily good. So when we try to regulate, when we try to understand, it's really important. But I believe that the approach that we need to take is really about empowering the smaller players to innovate instead of protecting the big players. And that is my take on the AI Act, that it protects the big players. So that is my main criticism on that. Because if we want to innovate, it's not about protecting the old big corporate. It's about empowering the small ones. And we can even see that the Web Summit this year is talking a lot about how this year they have a lot more bootstrapped companies. So nowadays, build a company is not a rocket science anymore. Everybody can do that. So we don't have to keep focusing on the big players anymore only, but fostering new ones. And I think that is what Europe might not be good at for now and could improve.
So Ben, what's your view on regulation, pros, cons, creating environments that may actually foster innovation?
Yeah, I mean, we're here in Portugal. I think like we are kind of governed by the EU, unlike another country that I left 6 years ago. And we don't want to get into that situation. So I think I see it's going to be very difficult to take on the US in terms of like funding. I mean, in terms of Draghi's report, I kind of agree that we can essentially never take on the US in terms of the funding, in terms of the big models, but we can implement them in different ways, right? So for my business, we couldn't really function if we were in the US. So the fact is, all of the different policies, all of the different auditing, testing, so we do auditing and testing, AI and auditing and testing, and essentially all of the biggest players are in Europe. So I would say the opposite. Like I'd say it depends on the sector, it depends on the industry, but obviously in general, lots of people are really looking to go into Europe. In my business, everyone is. So yeah, I would say that would be what it is.
Jose, what's your point in terms of looking at it from a Web3 perspective?
I'll put things in a different, perspective, if you want. I mean, Web3, and now we're talking about industries from 4.0 to a certain extent, the fourth, industrial revolution. I wanted to bring you a little bit back. And actually, it's good for you, from your German basis. Germany is a very good use case in terms of ecosystem building in the transition from the first to the second industrial revolution. You have what is called this kind of like scientific industrial era, from the 1880s up until the 1920s, 30s. There's a German word for that, which I don't remember. I was trying to recall in my notes, but I don't remember. And this is where there's a very good articulation. This is after the German unification. Germany already had, a very good, university system that then becomes integrated. And then this is where, all these Nobels are coming, right? This is, when Germany is in the breakthrough of chemics, biochemical, physics, all of that. Then this overlaps into big industry. Right, this is where big pharma is coming up. This is where the country is being built up, right? But you have, this mindset, a vision for the country. This is the German case. If you look at Silicon Valley, you have, again, the advent of the third industrial revolution. This is computing, right? And then again, there's a vision, right? There's a vision for the country, which is to put the man in the moon. Interestingly enough, they already had the tax exemptions in California since, the 1920s, right? And they already had, I was actually researching for this, radio was there already since the 1910s, already interacting with university, with the research for this, right? So with Stanford and whatnot. And as you know, VCs are coming from the exits from the first, like semiconductors companies that were working in these governmental projects, right? So what am I getting with this? What is now in Europe? Do we have any sort of big vision that can overlay and feed into the ecosystem? Number one. Number two, and you just give you yourself the answer. Do we care about what Europe is standing for these days? Do we care about values? Do we care about regulation? Do we care about what we stand for as Europeans? Because this is a selling point, right? Regulation, consumers' rights, like protecting of investment, like GDPRs, like AI Acts and so forth. As an entrepreneur, do you care about this? Do you care about geopolitics? Do you care about the fact that you are competing with US or with Russia or with, with China? Do you care about this? Is this a factor? When you are entering the fourth industrial revolution, where, you're not really building industries to occur, most of the cases. You are living in a displaced world, where, digital nomadism, it's a factor. Remote working is a factor. You're not depending, so much about, the attraction model, that you used to have in the former industrial revolutions, on these transitions. So you're talking today about, network stating. You're talking today about these pop-up cities, these kind of areas of, free innovation. Like you have in Dubai, you're starting to have now in Argentina, they're trying to have it now, in El Salvador. We're going to see now what's the outcome of the US elections, which either A or B, blue or red, it's going to be, at least in our area, crypto-friendly. It's like rest to see if more regulated or more deregulated. So coming back to Europe, Europe is very good regulating. It's not very good deregulating as a body. But interesting enough, it has regulated ways for you to deregulate. What I want to say about this, we have the CLTs projects, which is the technological free zones. It exists in law in Portugal. What does this imply? This is a sandbox where you can place product or services. You ask exception from the regulation in order to experiment with your product and your services in contact with the regulator or the agencies. Or, in the absence of regulation, you can come and experience. And then in contact with the regulations or the regulators, you can actually foresee future regulation. This exists from the regulatory point of view. Right?
So Europe being a highly regulated, unregulated, safe place in order to play.
But in order for this to come to fruition, the ecosystem must be organized. You need to have projects to put behind. This is where everything comes into full circle.
So the future of ecosystem building then is a regulated ecosystem place where all of us are well connected and well working together in a very orderly way instead of the high growth.
If you allow me, this is a challenge because although simultaneously we are living in a quite individualistic world, rightfully so, because people want to build up, they have their vision, they have their, their mantras, like what they want to be communicating through their companies and through their product. Simultaneously, here we are talking about ecosystems and how we can do collectively. So this is the tension. This is what we need to solve.
Ben, any closing words? Sorry, you were drinking.
I'll let Pedro start.
Pedro? Closing words? Anything you want to add?
No, closing words. Actually, one part that I really believe is fundamental to the ecosystem and that I wasn't able to speak before is that I really would like to praise this event for having a good bit of diversity, because that is something that we still lack a lot as an ecosystem, and we really should strive for that in many ways, not only gender inequalities, but in many ways. When we talk about what do we want to build, what do we want our ecosystem to be in the future, we shouldn't be aiming at the extractive mindsets that have been destroying the ecosystems and everything around the world. We need to build something new. So if we are looking forward, if we want to build the ecosystem for the future, as I said, we need to imagine better futures and we need to look for something new. Learning from the other mistakes and building on top of that. So I believe it's really fundamental that we bring more people to the table, that we bring new people, younger generations as well, and not always have the same people at the decision-making level. So that is something that, talking about ecosystem in future, that is fundamental in my opinion.
So highly regulated, completely open to everyone, open access, inclusive. Ben, do you want to add something?
No, I think just being able to just speak from the same page, so having the, like, although the EU sort of kind of has this blanket of regulation, each individual country has its own regulation again. So it's just like, for us, especially in compliance, it's really tricky to go into Germany and do the same inspection report as it would be in Portugal, even if it's the same company or the same company doing it. So I think having sort of blanket regulation that actually governs across the EU allows businesses to foster faster, allows innovation to improve, and allows companies from an ecosystem like Portugal to really go across Europe quickly and not look at the US as being the only place to go, or Asia as the only place, or China, or whatever. Like, because actually it should just be governed under one sort of common rule.
Awesome. Big thanks to my panel. Big round of applause.